Miami, yes, they lose their starting quarterback, Cam Ward. And we know that Miami was this close last year. So, Miami's a playoff contender this year. Greg, way to take a chance. Okay, I'm not intending to go viral with some dramatic prognostications. I liked Miami last year. I like Miami again this year. I like the program that Mario Cristobal has created. And I think now they're not going to have to be as heavily reliant on annual transfer portal additions. It feels like this is a group that the foundation has been built via high school recruiting, and they can kind of pick and choose. All right, yes, we need help there. Yes, we need a little depth there. Yes, we lost our quarterback. We can get a veteran. Carson Beck's on the table. Yeah, we'll take him. So I look at where they're at as a program, and I'm super optimistic with the balance that they have between homegrown development and going out and picking and choosing the portal pieces that they want to highlight. They can, if they want to, like they have the last couple of years, go out and get a ton of guys in the portal. That's not exactly the way they're going. So you look at Carson Beck, we'll start there, because a lot of the excitement surrounding Miami is probably hedged because of Cam Ward's departure and how good Cam Ward was. And the perception that Carson Beck is maybe a little bit up and down. I'll go back to kind of what Cam Ward was prior to arriving at Miami. And you know what Cam Ward was? He was a guy that played kind of out of structure an awful lot. He took a lot of risks with the football. He was kind of a one-man show and didn't have a ridiculous amount of help around him at Washington State. They had a good team, but it was kind of all about Cam Ward. Well, if you actually look back at last year's version of Georgia, what was Georgia offensively? You might think, and you will see the G and the silver breeches and the red jersey, and you'll think, well, Carson Beck had unbelievable talent around him. No, he didn't. Carson Beck had a running back in Trevor Etienne that was in and out of the lineup. He had a receiving core that led the country in drops. He had an offensive line that at times got completely overwhelmed, most notably against Kentucky and against Ole Miss. They got pushed around an awful lot up front because they had guys that were in and out of the lineup. The left tackle was a huge problem. He got replaced at one point. They lost Tate Ratledge. He was out of the lineup for a while. They had to force another guy in there. They were just kind of mixing and matching the whole season. So it felt like in many ways, and it was a running game that averaged like 100 yards a game. They couldn't take any pressure off the passing game. So Carson Beck, if you look at where Cam Ward was and where Carson Beck was, albeit, okay, Washington State personnel, Georgia personnel, very different with the supporting cast. What was put on Cam Ward's shoulders at Washington State is very comparable to what was put on Carson Beck's shoulders. It was all about him. If he played well, they won. If he didn't play well, they lost. Pretty simple and probably not fair. You also look at what they have coming back around Carson Beck. You look at the offensive line. You got a bunch of guys back, 4 starting offensive linemen back from the number 1 scoring offense in college football. You have a system with the passing attack that I think is actually really well suited to what Carson Beck wants to be. They have at least 6 top 100 players that were brought in via the transfer portal. And like I said, at least 6. Well, because some of the groups that are ranking these players, some have them in the hundreds, some don't have them in the top 100. Either way, they had a really good additions in the portal. You go out and get a bunch of different positions of need that they needed as well. They did lose a top-tier wide receiver in Isaiah Horton, but I do think they're probably feeling pretty good about what they have at wideout and the personnel they might be able to attract at that spot. You look at the schedule too. The schedule is difficult, but not impossible. 2 of its toughest games for Miami are at home, including the game against Notre Dame. That'll be on the 31st of August. That'll be on Sunday night, so we're all looking forward to that. And Notre Dame's got a lot of pieces to replace in their own right. I'm also super bullish on Florida, so you'll play Florida a little later in the month. There in September, they'll come to Miami. and what will likely try to be a game you would think that Florida's had circled after the way things went for them last year. At Florida State's a tricky one, but who knows at this point how good Florida State's going to be. Playing Louisville on a short week on a Friday on the 17th of October is also very difficult. You go to SMU. But looking at kind of the rest of the schedule, yes, road game at Pittsburgh at the end of the year. Yes, road game at Virginia Tech at the end of the year. There are some tough spots in there for sure, but they should be favored in pretty much every game. If you really look at it, I think they'll be favored against Notre Dame at home. I think they'll be favored against Florida at home. I think they'll probably be favored on the road at Florida State, more than likely, until that point where Florida State proves they can kind of play up and rise to the occasion. And hey, that game's in October. Maybe they will by that point. The only game I'm not sure 100% certainty they'll be an underdog in is that at SMU game, because I'm still a little unsure about what SMU is going to be. So I look at Miami, and while people are concerned about Carson Beck's elbow and being able to participate in the spring and how much chemistry will be lost if he can't throw in the spring and in the early part of the summer, guys, Carson Beck's a fifth-year senior. He's been around. He knows what he's doing. He'll be fine. I'm not concerned about it whatsoever. It's a very quarterback-friendly offense, and I think he'll step right in and probably remind everybody why he was the Heisman favorite going into last year.